Hi, welcome to another episode of ServiceNow TechBytes, the podcast that helps you use the product better and more efficiently. I'm Suzanne Smith, your host. Today, we have a big and very important topic to discuss here on the podcast. We are talking about integrations, and we have two great guests joining us today remotely. Let's say hi to Cameron. Hi, Cameron.
Hello, everyone.
And Gabriel. Hi, Gabriel.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Cameron Stone has been with ServiceNow for, is it about a year and a half, Cameron?
It's pushing 2 in January.
It's pushing 2 in January. He is a senior security technical consultant here at ServiceNow. And what I love most about Cameron is, even though that is his title at ServiceNow, if you look him up on LinkedIn, you will see that he puts his title down as Extraordinary Toaster Automation Specialist. Do you want to explain that, Cameron?
Yeah, so I just like to play with things, and that's kind of what my LinkedIn profile represents. I've been tinkering with just about anything that has a plug in it for a very long time, and I very much like the old BSD operating system, and they used to joke that they could make BSD run on a toaster, so that's kind of where that comes from.
Okay, well, I just thought that was like the most awesome title ever.
Well, nowadays it's almost literal.
It is, isn't it?
If BSD was on a toaster.
Exactly. And Gabriel Finney is a principal technical consultant here at ServiceNow. And Gabriel has been at ServiceNow for 8.5 years. And I did a little calculating, and I figured out that you were the 55th person hired at ServiceNow. Does that sound about right?
Something like that. Yeah, sure is.
That is an amazing stretch of years at ServiceNow, Gabriel. You are truly an old timer.
Thanks, I think.
With Gabriel's experience, we are going to ask him the first question because integrations is a big, important topic. I think a lot of customers are attracted to ServiceNow and buy ServiceNow because of the ability to do integrations. It's very important. It has been important to the product for so many years. So I'd like to turn to Gabriel and say, can you give us a little history about integrations in this product and kind of where it started and how it has evolved over time, just to give people some context on this big topic?
Sure. So, I mean, even way back in the beginning, obviously, we weren't the first software that had ever come out with the concept of integrations. David Liu was very heavy in building out the original integrations that would exist, or the integration points for ServiceNow. And really, it started as a real simple system where we could import data in different formats like CSV or Excel files. We could integrate using the LDAP protocol to pull in users and different types of core data that were absolutely necessary to migrate from one system to another, or for two systems to coexist. But then throughout the years, we came up with ways to build upon that. And we also came up with ways to adapt to new technologies that would come out, from, if we take it way back to 2008, right? We didn't really, things like REST existed, but they weren't very popular. We didn't run into very many customers that were using systems that integrated using things like REST. Where now today, almost every system that we run into, every customer we run into wants to use REST. Just as an example, you've got other places like single sign-on and how we've moved from Digest to SAML 2, for example, as far as popularity contests are concerned.
And when we talk about integration within ServiceNow, there are a couple different kind of types of integrations, right? We have integration with third-party applications. We have integration with custom apps. And then we also have, if you would consider it an integration between ServiceNow instances, right?
Right. So you've got, I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, you're just barely touching the tip of the iceberg, as they say, right? An integration, I mean, by design, is something that can take any two systems and make them communicate with each other in one way or another, for one purpose or another. So some of the common ones, some of the ones you've gone over there is like login integrations, the ability to, one, get user data so that we know who should be able to log in, but then two, be able to integrate with authentication systems that may be pre-existing and they may not be going anywhere. ServiceNow's maybe not designed to replace those because they're used for many disparate systems. And ServiceNow just happens to be another system that's coming along that needs to also integrate or authenticate with those. But then from there, you can extend on that and do things like single sign-on, where that may actually utilize the LDAP server that would have also been used for authentication. And then you go into things like data and process, right? Ways to bring in the core data, whether it also happens to be users or if it's group memberships or if they're configuration items. And we have many ways of integrating and pulling in data and process. So two of the core ways that include many specific styles, I guess, or protocols are event-based and batch load. So from there, event-based would cover things like web services, which that brings on a whole nother plethora of different protocols. Some of the more common would be SOAP and REST. And then within that, you've got the ability to utilize our mid-server technology. So it's easier to integrate with local area networks that may not be on the internet or accessible from the internet typically. And then you've also got batch load. So this is the concept of taking some kind of data set, whether it's in the format of a CSV file or an Excel, or even stored in a JDBC database, for example. And we can bring that data in systematically and logically using our import set system. And then from there, we have something that sometimes is referred to as user interface integrations, which are pretty basic at the core. It's just the idea of throwing ServiceNow into an iframe or vice versa, maybe throwing some other portal into ServiceNow using an iframe. And then you've also got in context, which is very similar concept. You're still using iframes, but it's the idea of taking a report, for example, making it public and showing that report in real time on another system. And again, or vice versa, because you could also do that going into ServiceNow. And then you mentioned, maybe last but not least, integrations from one ServiceNow instance to another, which is a very fun one because I know in some documentation I've seen, I don't know if they've taken it out, you'll see things like, well, it's a snap, no problem, it's super easy. And to an extent, technically, that would be correct. But you do run into certain challenges. There's certain things you want to watch out for. For example, you may be implementing two separate ServiceNow instances, or they may already exist and have already been implemented. And now you're trying to integrate them, but maybe they've been implemented in completely different ways. So you've got different fields on a particular form that you might be trying to integrate. You've got different choice values available for fields like, for example, state field, something like that. And when you try to go in to integrate them, the technical side of things, no problem. But where the challenges start is trying to map those different concepts that may exist separately in each of those ServiceNow instances.
Yeah, the possibilities with integrations are big, and as you described, we have several different kinds. So there are a lot of options out there. How does a customer get a custom app or a custom integration? Do they do it themselves? Do they turn to ServiceNow? Do they go to a partner, or what are the options if a customer wants to do an integration?
Well, I think you might have taken the answer right from us.
Oh,
Those would be precisely the
that's it.
on,
So, do you find that most customers do the integration themselves, or are they coming to ServiceNow for? Is it a combination of those different methods?
That's a good question. I think it boils down to being a combination. It really depends on who they're working with and what resources they have. If they are a new resource, then 9 times out of 10, I mean, Cam, I think you would agree that we will work with them on the professional services side. But if they've got resources or they're working with a partner, then typically they'll at least start those integrations on their own.
Yeah, that's typically what I see. I would say from the standpoint of the customer, they will sometimes take on the simpler integrations like a flat file load from Excel. If they're just trying to load things like CIs or assets into the tool, they have the concept of how the tool works and can get that data in. But once it starts to become more of a process-driven integration, where we have to update secondary systems based on conditions on, say, a task or any record in the tool, that is more often than not where we get involved, or the partners. There's lots of great integration partners out there. We do see some of the more complex stuff come across our desk, I would say, especially when we work with the managed service providers that Gabe and I both have worked with. They have multiple customers that are all integrating into one system. So we tend to see, a lot more complexity in some of those integrations.
Yeah, that makes sense. The simpler ones, maybe the customers take on themselves, but if it kicks up a notch in complexity, then they'll turn to a partner or ServiceNow. That makes sense. If a customer wants to do an integration, they have something in mind. Can you give us some best practices for how the customer can get started on the right foot, whether they are doing a custom integration for themselves or working with a partner or working with ServiceNow? So what best practices are there when the customers are in that planning phase? Are there things they can do from the get-go to really help themselves and set themselves up for success with integrations?
There definitely is. The first thing that I usually start with is trying to determine, is this a one-way integration or a two-way integration? Because that drives one of the bigger options. If it's a one-way integration where we're just trying to pull in data from a system inside the network or another cloud, I always try to first go with a JDBC integration. And that's if we can get access to whatever the database is that's holding this information. It's not always easy. Sometimes they don't have the service matter expert available to help us get that data out in the way we want it. But it's the fastest way to pull data into the tool without using a web service or a flat file, which can be cumbersome when you're using Excel files, especially large Excel files. So I typically try to find out, is it one way? And if it is, can we use the SQL or JDBC connection to connect to the database and just go from there using a data source? If it's a two-way integration, we're typically always talking about a web service protocol at that point, some form of web service, and sometimes it's custom. And 9 times out of 10, we also have a mid server involved. So we have to determine, is the connected system inside the customer's network? And if we have to update it, we need a mid server. So the very beginning of scoping and integration just the questions are, which direction is data flowing? Where is the system we're connecting to? And then kind of asking what protocols are available for us to leverage in this scenario, which there are multiple that you can typically use, but sometimes there's a better answer, like JDBC for a one-way connection.
Good tips. Gabriel, do you have any good best practices, especially for people planning?
I thought that was a really good, really good overview, but there are two things. I mean, the first I was going to say is documentation, right? Read the documentation, please. If you're looking into any specific integration, we have documentation on it. It's not 2008 anymore. Read the docs, utilize those. They're awesome. But Cam mentioned something that is super important and gets overlooked very often in the sales cycle. And sometimes we have to go back to it, and we have to be very open and honest about it, because this can really hang up an integration. And that's the SME, the subject matter expert. ServiceNow is not a subject matter expert on everything, right? We might have happened to come across certain things, so we'll know a couple of, some of the specifics of a certain integration or external system. But you can't assume that we're going to know whatever it is that you're trying to integrate with ServiceNow. We can help you open up those integration points on the ServiceNow side. We can help you, as you discuss or bring in a subject matter expert and help us understand what that system is, we can help them get that integrated. But a lot of times, if we do not have previous knowledge on that external system, that subject matter expert is absolutely necessary.
Good information, good advice. Thank you. I want to go into some tips and tricks now, and I'm wondering if either of you, the base system does provide some integrations. Google Maps is one of them. I know Verizon e-bonding. Have you had to do integrations with customers with some of these base system provided ones? And I think they are very popular. Do you have any tips and tricks around those?
Yes. I mean, yeah, there's tips and tricks galore there. I think most of them are going to revolve around some of the same concepts as the ServiceNow to ServiceNow integration, right? A lot of times the teams in pre-sales will get hung up on, okay, what are the technicalities? How hard is that? Okay, that's what we're going to estimate for. We're going to estimate the effort based on that. But usually the challenge isn't in the technology. It's in what you're trying to map from one to one or from one side to another. So that's where the challenges can be, especially with things like quote unquote e-bonding. You give it a name, makes it sound super simple. It's already structured, done, deal, right? Just turn it on. But the reality is, even with e-bonding, you still have to map and understand what you're mapping, right?
Yeah, exactly. Cameron, do you have any tips and tricks to add?
Yeah, well, the couple things that I think of that we do a lot of, is LDAP, is single sign-on with ADFS. We do those almost, it seems like 90% of the time. Everybody's got some form of directory server and a single sign-on source to use to log in. I have had an ADFS integration turned on in one day from start to finish, and I've had one that took 6 months. And I think the tip and the trick goes back to having the expert that knows the system, because so often it's just thought that we will know what to tell you what to do, and we don't always know what to tell you what to do. And in cases where they say, get in my environment and do this for me, there's always the potential that you could break something. So we don't want to jump into a customer environment necessarily. So having the expert is really kind of the biggest tip and trick that you can get. Going away from some of our standard integrations that are in the plugin catalog, whenever someone is scoping a custom integration, I see this so often, even with some of the plugins available and the apps in our store, they're integrating directly with the tables, the stock tables, if you will, so the incident table itself. There's definitely a better way to go about it using an import set and a transform map. And even if you're just pushing it straight across into the incident table without doing any data cleansing, it gives you the flexibility to make a change if something is going to go wrong or if that data needs to be validated, instead of going straight to the incident table where you have no control and whatever would land there lands there. You can have a temporary table, look at that data, and then pass it over to the incident table. And I am always pushing for my customers to do that. And as many integrations that I work with, that's always the standard approach. And it's just kind of a best practice, if you will, but it's also really handy because then you don't have to do a lot of extra scripting on business rules and things like that to sanitize your data when it comes in.
Yeah, I don't think you can emphasize that enough. I mean, especially, I don't know what it is, the REST Explorer. I don't know how many listeners have seen that. It's really cool. But something about it, I see more and more direct integrations attempted going around using the web service import sets, which you can use with REST as well. So yeah, I definitely agree. I couldn't agree more.
Good advice. Do either of you have an underdog feature for us? This is something we like to talk about on the podcast. Maybe in the case of integrations, a way of doing an integration or a particular integration that you have seen that's really cool and can help customers out a lot, but that a lot of people don't really know about yet.
So I can think of a couple things. The mid server to me, I call it the Swiss Army knife of our tool. It can do anything. It is. I have done some insane stuff with the mid server where we weren't able to do it on the main instance itself. And Gabe probably remembers back to the time when we used to have access to all the Java libraries within the main instance, where you could basically uh, use the classes that were there, which are now wrapped up
Right.
in glide calls. But the mid server is still available to do that. So you can throw a jar file down on the mid server and have it tie in with anything, including going back out to the cloud. So I've done an integration where I've leveraged the mid server to use a Java class that wasn't available to me in the main ServiceNow instance in the cloud, and then push back out to go talk to a system that was in the cloud and retrieve data. So it's like a little third party, like I said, Swiss Army knife. It really can do anything that you need it to do, and it's my favorite thing to really work with. It's very, very capable.
Great. Gabriel, do you have any underdog feature for us?
I can think of a lot of really cool things that you can do with integrations, but what would be something, most people haven't heard of? And I didn't have anything like that. I mean, and I know I already mentioned the REST Explorer, but if you haven't messed with that yet, not so much an underdog feature. I mean, it's right there in your face if you look for it. But it is a really, really cool advancement that hasn't been there forever. I mean, it's only been there for a couple of releases, and it is just fantastic. It's a fantastic way of being able to traverse the data hierarchy that's in ServiceNow and figure out how to integrate with it.
Super. So our underdogs are the mid server and the REST Explorer. We're going to give those a little publicity plug here. Thank you for sharing those. I want to ask each of you, what is your favorite integration that you've ever done? Something really quirky or something really useful or something that really made a difference for a customer? What's your favorite integration you've done?
For me, automation. I love automation. I'm so fascinated by it in ServiceNow and outside of ServiceNow, especially the toaster
Yeah, I was going to
thing
say, we're
makes me
going back
think
to the
of
toaster, aren't we?
that. But I mean, that's orchestration, right? That is our automation system, or at least the a core framework for it. And every project where I'm doing orchestration, it's just doing fascinating things. Not quite running toasters, I don't think at this point, but being able to manage CIs, create virtual machines and other systems, just by interfacing with ServiceNow, right? So it's really awesome stuff.
Yeah, I have a couple really. When I first started working with ServiceNow back in 2011, I was hired at Fruition, and they asked me to make the integration work, which is part of our Notify Now plugin, but it wasn't available at the time. And so I had a lot of fun figuring out their API, and I had built quite a few features that far extend what we currently offer in our Notify plugin, custom for a customer. And it was really just a lot of fun having another system basically talk to you in a robot voice and read you incidents, and you could press 1 on your phone and say, I'm accepting this, or change the priority to 3. And you could just really interact with the tool over a voice channel, which was pretty cool. The second thing that we did, which wasn't as heavily involved in this a couple of years back, we automated the brewery work order line. And we basically, all their brewing equipment that needed to have filters changed and temperatures checked, all of those type of things were automated through ServiceNow using a custom work order system that we built. And it was fun to say that ServiceNow makes beer.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
going to be an integration that everybody loves, right?
No kidding.
That's awesome. I also wanted to ask both of you, if you were talking to a customer that was thinking about doing an integration, but they were intimidated by the process, what advice do you give customers that might be intimidated by trying to either do an integration themselves or reach out for help?
Mine's simple, so I'll go first. Use a sandbox. definitely use a sandbox. If you don't have one, ask for one. Ask your management, ask your boss, because usefulness is just unlimited. I mean, it's very useful to have that.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. The tool itself, I've worked with a lot of tools. I've been doing system integrations for a long time. This tool integrates it's by far the easiest tool I've ever worked to integrate with other systems. Every table is web service accessible. You can get data in and out of this tool so easily without having to do really anything. It's all just about what the other side can do. And half the time, I tell people, don't worry about what your side looks like. I can adapt to you if you don't have the expertise. And our tool allows us to easily do that. But as somebody getting started, sandbox, documentation, and using things like mind mapping software to figure out how the integration is flowing so you can get a visual of it in your head. So many times I have customers that get kind of confused on which way data is supposed to flow. And I draw it out. I have it in front of me so I can always reference, where am I? Where's it going? Why is it going there? So really a visual is pretty key in understanding those type of integrations.
Good advice. Very good advice. We have a lot of resources out there in ServiceNow world for integrations. I'm going to mention a few, and Gabriel and Cameron, if I'm missing anything, please let me know. Our product documentation at docs.servicenow.com, the high knowledge base for knowledge base articles, our video website, Now Support on YouTube, the ServiceNow website itself, and the ServiceNow community. Do you have a favorite resource among all of those that you guys use, or have I missed one?
I use the community quite a bit. I'm always digging in there just to see what people are doing. There are some third-party sites that are just absolutely great. There are people that continue to work for ServiceNow. There's John James Anderson's site. Tons of stuff about integrations and REST. And then there's the SNC Guru, where they cover some occasional integrations on there. But really, our community it's growing pretty rapidly, and I can usually find some information in there about what I'm looking to build.
Right. I can echo that as well. The community is great. The docs are really good. I mean, they haven't always been that way, so feel lucky that you can find the stuff that you can find nowadays. But then going back to the community, if we really take it back to the early days, we have the ability to blog, right, in our community site. So I think his posts are still out there. If you search for Slightly Loony, he posts a ton. It was like a whole series on just JavaScript type stuff that was specific to ServiceNow. It would cover a lot of the framework classes that are available to you. And it was just super helpful to me way back when, and just awesome type of information. Plenty of other stuff out there, don't get me wrong, but if you're just looking for something that you may not have been able to find otherwise, that would be a good one.
I remember the Slightly Loony posts, Gabriel. They were awesome. They were good.
Yes.
Well, this has been a big topic of conversation. I want to thank you both for all of your good advice. We will probably have to come back to this topic again and do another podcast, maybe dive into one or two of these integrations. But I thank you both very much for being here. Thank you, Gabriel.
Awesome. Thank you.
And thank you, Cameron.
Yes, thank you.
And let's hope that customers give some of these integrations a try and do some really creative work. Thank you both.